Well, good morning, councillors. You might get this meeting underway. Thank you. We good to go? All right. Good morning, councillors. Good morning, members of the staff. Good morning, members of the community viewing in on live stream at this somewhat early hour. But we're convening this meeting earlier because it's an important item that we have to, by which we have to meet a deadline, although we were informed this morning that deadline has now been extended by 1 month. So, but we're here, so we'll deal with the matter. As is customary, councillors, we'll acknowledge the Durrumbal people, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, and pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We have a full attendance, no leaves of absence. Now, item 4, declarations of interest. I believe we have a couple. Councillor Eastwood.
I have a conflict of interest on the Fireys matter, Mr Mayor, in relation to having shares in Surf Lakes and what's the name of the road?
Tookers Road.
Gravel Pit Road.
Gravel Pit Road, Tookers Road. Yeah. All right.
So I'd like to leave when that matter comes up.
All right. So, Councillor Bello, I think you have one as well.
Yeah, that's correct, Mr Chair. In the same circumstances as Councillor Eastwood, and I believe though that through yourself and the CEO there's going to be...
We'll deal with it in a minute, yeah.
Okay, the scope. But certainly when the matter is comes to the debate, I'll be declaring that interest and exiting the room.
All right, thank you. All right, so we have no public forums, deputations, a special meeting. There's no business arising because it's a special meeting, so I'm just going to go straight to the agenda item, and we'll deal with the Black Summer Bushfire Recovery Grant issue first. Now, councillors, because there are 2 declared conflicts of interest here, we've got a number of procedural motions to go through first. So first of all, we've got to raise the matter off the table, lift it off the table, and then secondly, what we might do is, in order that Councillor Eastwood and Councillor Bello are not excluded from the entire proceedings, or the entire report discussion, because of their conflict of interest, we will pass a procedural motion, hopefully, to split the Tookers Road / Gravel Pit Road issue and deal with that separately, but still within the confines of this report. Everyone understand where I'm coming from? All right. Councillor Mather?
Have we confirmed that we can do that?
Yes, we have.
Okay.
Taken advice from the CEO.
Thank you.
And I probably wouldn't suggest it, Councillor, if it wasn't doable. All right, so we'll raise the matter off the table. Can I get a procedural motion? Thank you, Councillor Mather. All in favour? Carried unanimously. All right, now, get a procedural motion to Mr CEO. Can I get some wording from you on that, please?
Yes, Mr Mayor, there's probably a couple of ways of attacking it. If there is, in the normal meeting procedure, we would invite questions from councillors to the author of the report, and then we would seek a proposer of either the recommendation or some alternative. If there was someone prepared to propose the recommendation, we would suggest that that's done with the exception of the Gravel Pit Road upgrade matter, and that would enable questioning and debate of the recommendation sans that particular proposal that gives rise to the conflicts, and then allow Councillors Bello and Eastwood to consider, to make their declarations and to then consider the Gravel Pit Road upgrade matter separately. The alternative is that declaration can occur now, and councillors consider that matter in isolation, determine that in advance, and then consider the balance of the report now.
All right. Councillor Hutton.
I would like to see us deal with project number 6 first, which includes the Gravel Pit Road, and then go forward and deal with the rest of the items, and that way it's...
All right. So some wording, Mr CEO, that potentially that council separates the item relating to Gravel Pit Road, Bushfire, Tookers Road.
Indeed, Mr Mayor, yes, a procedural motion that the matter relating to recommendation 6 be deferred.
Okay.
Sorry, I'd like to deal with it first as opposed to deferring.
Okay, in which case we get councillors Bello and Eastwood to make their declarations now, and we'll consider that and invite them back for consideration of the balance.
All right. So the conflict of interest are noted there. Right, so the procedural motion is that item 6 be dealt with separately and as a matter of priority for this meeting. As a matter of priority, I'm looking for some help here on the wording, councillors. Just see, is that fine? That's fine. All right. All right.
Happy to propose that?
I think I've moved it anyway. Justine's got me up there.
Oh, I can change that. I'll just...
Let's leave it there. It's fine. All right. So all in favour? Thank you. We'll come and get you, councillors Eastwood and Bello, when it's done.
I don't think we're actually there to vote. But that was pretty-
Oh, right, okay.
Thank you.
Probably not.
Pardon me. All right, councillors. We've got Mr Mazzafari at the table this morning. Welcome. And we'll get you to discuss item 6 first of all, please. Councillor Hutton. Sorry.
Mr. Hutton. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Hutton. I'm happy to move this one when we come out, and if there's not a need for a huge amount of discussion, recognising the depth of what we're going to try and get through in this special meeting, happy to move it with
All right.
haste.
Okay, thank you. Mr Mazzafari, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So focusing on number 6, which is the bushfire mitigation budget, the report, I do apologise for the late report that was sent to you updated last night, but as you can imagine there was a little bit of dynamic motion in regards to how we came to this recommendation. So the bushfire mitigation budget in number 6 on the report, my apologies councillors. So bushfire mitigation.
Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, I didn't get that late report last night.
Was it on your, should have been on your
is there any-
emails, councillors?
Well, it might be, Mr Mayor, but I just wasn't aware that it was a new one, that's all.
All right, okay. Well, perhaps Mr Mazzafari can explain the difference.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Or
That-
certainly
what the
something like-
difference is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the modified report has basically been updated as a result of the consultative meeting we had with the Royal Fire Brigades, and then as a result of the meeting with the local disaster management group. And the reason for that was to discuss with both those groups the initial list that council were putting forward. That was workshop with councillors, and I know that you weren't at that first workshop, Councillor Mather. And then also to discuss the Royal Fire Brigade's list that was sent as a letter to council. So very much a long story short, there was no concerns raised in regards to the initial council report, and we had time with the Royal Fire Brigade to discuss that letter that came through with their list, and also to go through the spreadsheet again and have a look if there's anything there. As a result of that Royal Fire meeting, basically the list that was presented was acknowledged, with the exception of a couple that dropped off because that was always taken care of in our list, and I'll explain what they are very shortly. There was one addition. The Dawson Road was actually added to that list as a result of consultation with that group, and that's on in the yellow up there, which is approximately 700 780 metres of bituming. The area that's not bitumened out there, basically, and a credit to Jeff Carter and the team for really chasing up some of these estimated costings. So I do appreciate the work that's been done there. So once we had that table, for want of a better word, we then went to the local disaster management group. The local disaster management group was taken through the same process and showed the initial council table, and they all acknowledged and accepted that. And by all means, just to acknowledge the councillors, we had the deputy chair there and the chair of the LDMG present at that meeting. The only consideration was the removal of one, which was on that rural fire list, and that was the ceiling outside the proposed rural fire shed. Now, the reason for that was that the concerns were raised by the basically the area office and regional office that may set up precincts for others because the lease hasn't been finalised yet, and why do we focus on that one and perhaps not be focusing on the Kawonga, Nirimba and Maryvale ceiling? So that was the decision made of that room. So with that, I've now formulated the list as you see in this report, and I'm happy to discuss a little bit more detail the number 6 as recommended by this group. So there's now a table supplied within the bushfire mitigation, which is page 11 of the council report, and that breaks it down a little bit. So the bushfire mitigation budget has now increased from the initial recommendation of $460,000 to $2,280,000. Now these are estimates at this stage. We have a little bit more work to do to get it finalised, and fortunate we now have another month to get this all squared away before the deadline, which has been set in 6th of October. So the ceiling of Kawonga Rural Fire Brigade has an estimate cost of $20,000. The ceiling of Nirimba Rural Fire Brigade entrance is $20,000, and Maryvale is also $20,000. But that is, as I said, councillors, an estimate. It could be $50,000. We'll get some more costings based on that going down the track. And by all means, Jeff can actually pitch in any time if he wishes. The gravel pit, Tookers Road, really good conversations around that table at the bushfire, at the rural fire consultative meeting, and I also had a couple of phone calls the next day from other rural fires that said, well, maybe we don't need it to that level, maybe we do this level. What we've got on this table at the moment is as a result of that consultation. So we're looking at about 2 kilometres of upgrading the platform, for want of a better word, to make an all-weather access. Now, there's a lot of work being done behind the scenes. I've had a call from Department of Transport Main Roads. Jeff is also working with Department of Main Roads. For those who was at the meeting on Monday night, we are still working with TMR because they've got the project to widen the corridor and make it double lane. So the uncertainty with that is, will there be limited access? Will there be concerns about the traffic count? Will there need to be some upgrading of the intersection of that road? There's still uncertainties. But at this stage, my recommendation is to put it forward, and then if we do get some contradictory information from TMR, then have another conversation. Through you, Mr Mayor, if I can get Jeff Carter, maybe he wants to add a little bit more in regards to the costings of that. If not, if the council are happy to leave it like that, we'll have a conversation later.
Thank you.
All happy?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Any questions, councillors? Hang on, Councillor Friend was first.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd actually like to hear what Jeff has to say before we make our decision.
All right.
Thank you.
What additional information are you chasing, councillor?
Well, the information that, the extra information that Dave was alluding to or referring to.
Yeah. We haven't actually got that information yet. We're still waiting for TMR. So there's a couple of things to take in consideration. The final project, what it looks like, where the ins and outs are going to be, for want of a better word. What are they doing with surf lakes? Will there need to be limited access, which means they'll lock it down to certain areas where they can actually access that double lane carriageway? We don't know that yet. So at the moment we're going on a normal upgrade, including a widening where the entry to the double lane will be. We haven't heard back from TMR. So at this stage, until we get that, which I'm more than happy to share that in an email or whatever we need, but at this stage, my recommendation would be to approve it, and then what happens after that, we can make a final decision after that. So again, this was rushed because we thought we had to have this in on the 2nd of September. All these costings will still need to be done, but through the chair's permission, I probably wouldn't hesitate making a decision based on this, waiting for that information. I'd actually make a decision based on the consultation we've done with the Rural Fire Brigade and the local disaster management group. That'd be my recommendation, Councillor.
Thank you. Mr Masfari, just a question in relation for the community if they are watching on live stream. So the original proposal by the RFB group for Keppels was $2.4 million for an upgrade for Gravel Pit Road. I was at the meeting, and the officers there, the first officers and their deputies, were quite happy just to upgrade a certain amount of it and not the whole lot. Could you tell us the difference between the 2 kilometres and what was first proposed?
Yeah. So it's more based on the, I suppose, the capability of that road. So the initial response was to upgrade the 2.5 k's all the way and make it probably a more trafficable carriageway. This upgrade will make it safer for emergency services vehicle and to be also used as an evacuation route. So the standard will be all weather. It just wasn't as long a period as it currently was. Interesting conversation I had the next morning with an officer calling me and saying, well, maybe we should gate it. Maybe we should lock it and just have it available for emergency use only. So that's still in the mix. But at this stage, the proposal or recommendation I'm putting forward is based on those conversations and, of course, the local disaster management group. And that's what we see in front of us here, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Mather.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. My question borders on council friends. When we talk about upgrade, what do we mean? Because the 2 kilometres approximately is unconstructed. Are we going to construct the road? Are we going to open the road? And how can we spend $2 million on a road and it's not even open?
Fair question. I'll ask the officers to direct that one. That one, okay. Mr. Carter, would you like to come to the table?
It would be upgraded to the current standard.
Mr. Carter, would you like to, Jeff, like to come to the table? Thanks. With the microphone. Yeah. You're right.
Yeah, Councillor Mather, the road will be upgraded to our current gravel standards. So yes, the formation would be built, draining structures would be built where needed, but the surface would remain unsealed. It would have imported gravel, but not be sealed.
My last question was, are we opening the road if we're spending $2 million? Are we opening the road?
Yes.
Because, or are we just going to leave it as a fire trail?
Well,
that's what I'm saying. If
No.
we're going to spend $2 million on it, we're going to have to do something more than just a fire trail.
That's right. It's going to be, it's one of the key points of discussion at the Royal Fire Brigade meeting on Tuesday night, sorry, yeah, was not only just for access for emergency vehicles like fire appliances, but also for evacuation. So if you're going to have 2-wheel drive vehicles going through there as an evacuation route, then it needs to be a decent standard road.
The unconstructed section, if you're coming from the north, going through the gravel section that's already constructed, then going to the unconstructed section, that unconstructed section, as I know it and understand the arrangement, is past the Shooters Club. Because from what I remember back then, the Shooters Club agreed to maintain that section of road themselves. So that would be included in the unconstructed part. We need to have a look at that and confirm that. And I keep coming back to if we intend to spend spend up to $2 million, we need the road open.
No.
It's a strategic road.
It'll be open, Councillor. It will be open.
Yeah, open as in put in the register as an open road. That's what I mean.
Correct.
Not just open to let the 2-wheel drives go through.
the estimates I've come up with are based on that assumption that it would become an open road. So it's currently about 1.6 kilometres. It's maintained by the surf lakes and the Shooters Club. Council doesn't maintain it. One would assume if we're going to open it as a through road that we would take over that maintenance. So the estimates to upgrade are based on that assumption.
So in the road register then we would have a constructed road from Annie Drive to the Yeppoon Road.
That's correct. That's my assumptions I've made in forming the estimates.
Yeah, well that's clear. All right, thanks Jeff.
All right, any other questions of the officers, councillors? Councillor Watson, you good? Okay, all right. Back to you, Mr. Mazafari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And just to add that on page 14, Jeff's team's done a little bit of work in regards to the budget implications, and I think it's important to add, as Mr. Carter said, that we are looking at approximately $70,000 per year on top of the existing road maintenance budget, because that will then be now a road on the register. So that's important to note as well. 70,000, 70.
Well, as I made the comment yesterday in the local disaster management group meeting, councillor, when you commit to these things, you commit to maintenance. All right, any other questions, councillors? All right, Mr. CEO, are we dealing with this as a vote at this point?
If the councillors have a mind to do that, Mr. Chairman, I thought I just should clarify. Councillor Hutton's procedural motion is for item 6 in its entirety. I'd be reasonably positive that the two departed councillors probably thought council was only going to determine the matter in which they are conflicted, which is only one part of
Project 6. Yeah.
which is in Kawonga, Narimbra, Maryvale, Dawson, in addition to the one that they're conflicted on. My guess, without speaking to them, is that they'd prefer to be here for the balance of those. If councillors are happy to simply determine the gravel pit road matter in isolation and then the balance.
Does that mean we have to hear the report all over again? I'm just conscious of time, Mr. Matt.
Yeah. All right. So we're happy with that process, councillor. Everyone understand what's happening? All right. So we've determined this. So then we'll call the councillors back into the room and discuss the other projects, and then essentially
The balance
balance.
of the report, the exception of that particular road.
Right.
So if there's someone prepared to propose that the 2 kilometres of gravel pit road project be...
Councillor Hutton, you said you were prepared to move that part, did you?
be submitted?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm just conscious of if we've already got an existing procedural motion, do we then need to rescind that motion prior to, like, what?
We have considered item, we've moved to item 6.
Yep.
The end result of that may be a motion that specifically nominates that project. That won't preclude the council from considering the balance of item 6 along with
Yep, well, happy to do that as per the wording you provide.
Right. I'm happy to second. Procedure. Sorry, I don't need a second. Yep.
And then we'll check the motion.
First one, council will consider the gravel pit road pattern as procedure. And then the second is council resolves to submit the gravel pit road project for the
I've done the wrong level. So this one will be actually for
that project and gravel road, gravel pit road.
They're not even that, no, it's only the current road on Canada.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Mr. Mayor, just acknowledging that the way it's presented, it's got the figures, it's got, can we not test it dealing with project 6 in its entirety first, like, because now...
So vote on it, you mean?
Yeah, just because if we're just doing gravel pit road and the costings are all connected into the existing 2.2 whatever, it just seems like we're making it...
Frankly, I prefer to deal with it that way, just to
Okay.
get it done. And so it's completely separate, Mr. CEO.
There's nothing precluding you from doing that, Mr. Mayor.
All right. And we put the...
What are we doing now?
So back to item 6 as recommended, to send you a motion.
No. It's just, yeah, it's just... I think if we don't do it this way, it's going to confuse me as well as anybody else. I'm a simple mind. I like clarity. So that'll just be dedicated to the upgrade of 2 kilometres of gravel pit road, will it not? He says, with a rising inflection in his voice, denoting a question. This is going to read as follows: that council continue bushfire mitigation in partnership with the requests from rural fire brigades, including upgrade to 2 kilometres of gravel pit road. Okay, all right.
The detail of what has what project 6 is.
Yeah, all right. So project 6. Yeah. Yeah. So you can take out, Justine, all of that bottom bit. Up to Kawonga, yep. You don't need that last bit in to fire stations from council roads, do you? In partnership with the requests from rural fire brigades. All right. So councillors, everyone across the resolution now? Understand what we're voting for? All right. So you need a seconder here. I'm happy to second that. All right, Councillor Hutton, do you wish to speak to the resolution?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
All right, okay. I think this has been done to death anyway. So, councillors, we'll go to the vote on this one. Moved Councillor Hutton, seconded Councillor by myself, that council submits project 6 bushfire mitigation in partnership with the request from the rural fire brigades, including access to the fire stations from council roads. All in favour? Carried unanimously. For those that are here, thank you very much, councillors. We'll find Councillor Bellow and Eastwood, please. So now you're going to talk to all of the recommendations apart from 6 now. Right. All right, councillors, for the Councillor Bellow and Eastwood, for your information, item 6 was dealt with separately and was carried unanimously. All right, so we are now dealing with the remaining items on the list as put forward through the local disaster management group from yesterday. So over to you, Mr. Mazzafari.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll basically get straight on to the officer's recommendation with a little bit of preamble about how we got to this. This was as a result of basically two lists being combined into one and being discussed at both a rural fire consultation meeting on the 24th and also at the local disaster management group meeting yesterday, the 25th. As a result of that, it is the officer's recommendation to put forward the following projects. The first project is the Bushfire Resilience Officer, and that is to extend the already fantastic work that's been done by our Bushfire Resilience Officer to really look at the strategic future. So continue the relationship with our Rural Fire Brigade, look at priorities, but also look at mapping and ways we can build our community resilience through that role. The second one is bushfire mitigation fleet items, and this was discussed at yesterday's meeting and the rural fire. This is fleet equipment that will be owned by council, that will be a resource that can be made available to our rural fire brigade and also to our state emergency services. So we're looking at equipment such as a tractor, which will give more availability to clear roads, and if you look at our responsibility to clear access into areas, that'll provide a better resource than the currently fleet equipment we've got. That tractor also provides, and the technology term will be incorrect here, but also provides the ability to spray water from the hubs to put out any fires that may be caused during slashing operations. And with that is an addition of a slashing unit that also mulches. So again, assist with bushfire mitigation using mechanical methods, but also not to cause a fuel load because of that leftover debris, but also to mulch it all the way up. There's also some boom attachments and buckets that will help with clearing debris, and very importantly, 2 spray units. Now the 2 spray units are trailable water tanks that we can drop off and let with the Rural Fire Brigade, but during flood events, it's also for the SES that could utilise to spray out houses, etc. So they're the fleet items that we've put in number 2 of this project. Number 3 is the Local Disaster Coordination Centre renewal. $300,000 is a rough estimate, and we are working on better estimates currently, but that is to upgrade the capability within that centre. It's already a remarkable centre, but this will give the availability for more interaction, so teams capability in that Local Disaster Coordination Centre. One screen instead of the current screens that will provide better input and better availability of input into that onto that screen. The fourth one is very similar to what I mentioned about the Bushfire Resilience Officer. This is the extension of our currently funded Recovery Officer that we have placed with our Economy and Places. If we look at the history of our disaster events, we look at the impact that it's cost to our prime producers, our horticulture, etc. This is to really work with them, but also to build the tourism and build the resilience back in our community based on that. So this was a focus on cumulative effects of disasters, but also, again, what I mentioned about the Bushfire Resilience Officer's role. This is to really highlight the fantastic work's being achieved and also to really strategic that. And we've had some amazing forums, and we've got a few more coming on. So that just gives us better support for that role.
Mr Mayor, can I just get some clarification on that one, please?
Just have you finished your presentation?
Still got another 3.
All right, you happy to entertain a question now?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
That position now, is that on staff at the moment, not in that position? Not doing that position at the moment? Because what I'm wanting to clarify is, does that person need to be in this job full time, or do they retain their original position and transfer across when needed? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, so this is a fully funded position. It's not on our FTE role. This has been put in place as a result of the comparable fires, and this is a recovery officer that we've embedded with Economy and Places. So that funding will run out. This will extend us for another couple of years and highlight what is being done. So what we can do after that, as this funding, if we're successful, starts being wound up, then we can have a conversation through the executive leadership team and to the council whether we need to fund these positions, Bushfire Resilience Officer and this role, or we let it slide and we go back to business as usual as best we can.
The only other part on that one is that while this person is in this new permanent role, or at least full-time role, do we back up with another person in that position? Do we need another person on staff to do her job?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Councillor. And through you, Mr Mayor, we have backfilled, and that backfill will continue based on that. So The position, the Bushfire Resilience Officer is standalone, so once that goes, there was no position that we backfilled. That was a brand new position we established as a result of fires. This position, the Economic Recovery Officer, has been backfilled from the normal role. So that would be then a request to backfill that position and continue with this role. If we didn't get the funding, our Economic Development Recovery Officer would go back to the normal role.
Back to you, Mr. Masafari.
Thank you. We'll move on. The next one is the Barmarie upgrades. Now, as you're probably all aware around this table, the Barmarie Sports Complex was used as a staging area during the Cobble Fire and was a great resource for the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services. This upgrade will provide a more stable platform for that, but also highlight the use for other agencies, including the ADF, Australian Defence Force, including, touch wood, having to set up emergency accommodation through Housing Public Works. We might have another area that we can set up there for other agencies. This is to support the response component of a disaster, whatever disaster that may be. The upgrade will provide a better car park area and also some hard stands where we can fill water, and also provide, as I said, an update for a staging. For those who was fortunate enough to go and visit that staging area, it was well set up and well done. This will provide a better platform for that to be achieved in the future. The other two is both economic projects. The Taste Capricorn project is to provide ongoing assistance through the Taste Capricorn coast, and that is continuation of what's currently going on. And the last one, number 8, is the Station Recovery Hub. During the last event, we had our recovery hub at the bottom of the coordination centre, or the hub. This will provide a platform for not only Community Connect by clearing and utilising that grassed area or open space area, but also to provide services into that building. If we have another event, if we've got downstairs up and running by lease, this will provide a service for recovery. It won't change how we do response. For those who came and visited during response to Cobble, we had the Department of Communities embedded. We shut the door at the back there. They had their own response recovery centre. We also had Department of Housing and Public Works along with every other agency. This is the next stage. This is where we start moving on to service delivery. This is for our volunteer agencies. This is for St Vincent de Paul, Salvation Army, Department of Communities, to provide that support for the community after a serious event, slant disaster, but also to open that space up for a community connection place. And that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All right. Councillors, any questions on the projects? I'm reminding you, it's questions, not debate.
Just a question, not so much on the items that are on there, Dave, but what's the quantum that comes to there
Yeah.
in total?
Yep. So through you, Mr. Mayor, estimates only at this stage for most of them, but it's about $4.6 million, and that includes the first project we spoke about, which is the item number whatever it was 6, which was as a result of the consultation with the Royal Fire Brigades.
Okay, so, and is it correct that councils or entities could apply up to 10 million, wasn't it? And if the pool was undersubscribed, then, so I guess my question is, my understanding was some of the brigades were pushing for more than I heard black tar. So,
yeah.
Is there the scope, or do we feel as if we've captured that from the brigade's request for that as an important aspect of their, their capacity, and we've got enough of it in there that, I mean, at 4.6, we're a fair way short of 10. I'm wondering, is there the ability, or what's the logic behind that? Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Mazafari, do you just want to confirm that figure? So incorporating project 6, the total costing, because, yeah, definitely not 4.6.
I haven't done the maths exactly, so I was looking at it. Thank you. You do the maths for. Thank you. I appreciate that. So to answer your question, councillor, there's no guarantee of that $10 million project. And there's no guarantee of any project funding coming this way. The media release stipulates that $4.5 million is available for projects delivered within Livingstone Shire. Now, this won't be the only projects that we put forward. There'll be other groups that will be putting forward projects as well. So there's no guarantee of that 10 million. Yes, there was lots of conversation around putting the tar down. What we'd like to do, and I mentioned this in the report, is continue to work with the rural fire brigades, start prioritising through what we've mentioned through the fire management group, local disaster management group, and lobby two ways. One is to look for available funding, and secondly, to look for funding in the state budget to support some of this, or in our operational budget. So I think it's important that we get down the priorities that were identified, and these priorities were identified last year as well, and then work very closely with our rural fire brigades and others to start looking at then going down and where else we can assist.
I have a question.
Yeah, it's about 6.6.
That's only 2 million out. Thank you.
I have a question.
Councillor Friend.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you to Mr Masfari. If council were to obtain or ask for the whole of the $10 million grant, and we had a number of different projects that we needed to undertake, how would that have an effect on the staffing? Would we be able to undertake those projects? We may get the money, but could we actually complete those projects?
Through you, Mr Chair, that would be a challenge to complete those projects based on the approved capital works program that's currently in place. And at the moment, it's also, very importantly, about the ongoing operational costs, which we haven't attained the figures based on that. At the moment, we've done this consultation and we're putting forward the recommendations that came out of that. And the Councillor Bella was exactly right. There was conversation about putting more tar down. I think we have an opportunity to work closely with that and then prioritise through the mechanisms that are in place, fire manager group, and then prioritise it. So if a group said we would like bitumen laid down here for this, let's put that forward. Right now, these are the priorities that have been identified, and that's what I'm happy to put forward, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Mather.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you to Dave. The fire trials, Dave, do we have enough in budget or otherwise to upgrade and maintain the fire trails for this season?
Yeah, at the moment, yes, Councillor. So we were fortunate enough to get some funding to do that strategic bushfire trials, which is now completed. The role of our bushfire resilience officer moving forward is working with our rural fire brigades to map all these fire trails, also start a planned maintenance schedule, and as I've mentioned before, to sit down with our rural fire brigades in the February fire management group meeting, which I've also recommended they have 4 fire management group meetings, which will form a subgroup of the local disaster management group. So we'll reinforce them as a subgroup, and then we can start working on budgets. So the reason, with that thinking in mind, if we get that nailed down in February, it gives us time to put a budget submission into our operational budget to continue the maintenance of these bushfire trails. There's also conversation around strategic bushfire trails in private property. The amount of work that's still required for bushfire mitigation is huge. So we need to be aware that this will be ongoing, and of course we will be requesting council budget to maintain these fire trails, to perhaps upgrade fire trails, and as I mentioned before, to also work very closely to put some of that tar down, as was mentioned.
Yeah. My concern was that Cabbage Tree Creek Road was one road mentioned that is strategic, and I think that's been overdue and needing attention for quite some time. Has that been attended? Has that been attended, or where will the funding come from to do that? Is it on the radar?
That is funded under current funding for disaster mitigation, category D, I think. Yeah. It involves the removal of some protected species plants, as in cycads and that. We've just issued a purchase order for that to happen. So we're hoping the works will be done in the next month, and Cabbage Tree Creek Road will be fully opened as a fire truck.
That's been a real bugbear, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, that one choke point, it was available, you were able to go from either end,
With
but that
difficulty.
one choke point we're hoping will be opened within a month.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Thanks.
Yeah, and just to further highlight that through you, Mr Mayor, part of that Category D funding we did use for bushfire mitigation, and that was one of the projects we identified, and plus also two-wheel access to Mapes Road, upgraded New Zealand Road. So that's is being done. We use that 1.3 to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Councillors, any other questions before we go into debate? All right.
Sorry,
Councillor Hunt.
just one further question. So in regards to the station quarter project, is the project that we have put forward in this round in terms of using it as the recub and the clean out, set out, whatever, is this a replication of the funding that we've sought through the previous grant that we applied for, or is this separate to that?
It's similar but separate. And what I mean by that, this is to upgrade the open spaces area, but also to get services and everything put there, so we can use it as a vacant building. So it is slightly different. This is based on what we can use for community connection and, of course, for recovery.
All right. Councillor Watson.
Mayor, through to Dave. With this, with the station, what sort of upgrade is it? That's something I've been wondering about. It's all.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's the decontamination of the open space area. It's to provide services within that building. It's to have some temporary car parking, but also to open it up for a community connection place. So that open space area, to make it maintained as a park, for want of a better word, and also then have a place where the community can meet, whether it be markets, whether it be get ready days, whether it be education sessions, but also to ensure that building can be utilised.
Councillor Friend.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Masfari, with the opening up of that open space area, I believe it's about $685,000 to undertake a decontamination of the site. What other things need to be done besides that decontamination?
So just to clarify, Councillor, with the open space area or in general for the whole project? Okay, yep. So it'll be establishing a temporary car park, depending on what happens in regards to the road around that area. It'll be ensuring services are provided to the area, so that it just makes sure the water's connected, make sure that we have power, telecommunications, etc., and just to tidy that up to make it inviting.
All right. Any other questions, councillors?
The only question I've got probably still unanswered in my mind. Depending on the answer, it might help me propose an amendment of some sorts. But I guess we've established that potentially the list there. There seems to be a request from the brigades for more black tar. Is there the scope to have amended in there that a quantum of money could be applied for? And whether it's by list of priority, these are our priority ones, and at the lowest of the list, if the $10 million or if the pool is undersubscribed, well, at least to have it in there identified, you've got a chance to not have it in there. So is there a risk in doing that, or would that be deemed suitable by the assessors of the pool?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, great question. I've already posed that question to the funding body. They want specific projects. My initial request to the funding body was to capture a budget that we could then go back and consult further, go through, look at priorities, capture all that and say, right, out of $5, $6, $10 million, we're going to do 17 water tanks here, we're going to do bitumen here. It's got to be project based. So as you recall, this application process was supposed to be completed by early September. We've now got a month. Is there scope? Yes, there is scope, but I think it's important to understand that this will be based on the objectives of the funding body, which are those three, which I've mentioned in the report. So do we have a risk of putting them in? We do, because then it looks like we're just going for anything we possibly can. By having it limited to this, it looks like we've actually prioritised, and which we have through the local disaster management group and the fire management group. So the risk is that. So, but to answer your question, unfortunately, no, and I would like to being able to say we would like $10 million to do projects based on further consultation through the local disaster management group, fire management group. That was not permitted.
A further question on that line, and I think the council is referencing the comments of one of the brigades that talked about the economic stimulus that can be provided through black tar, saying, it opens up new opportunities for properties and things. And I wonder, what we've got here in this 6.6 is a list of the projects that we believe not only that we're ready to do, or we believe that we're ready to do, that we believed we were going to be able to do on that shorter time frame. I wonder whether we should be looking at an addition, as opposed to an addition to the list itself, having a second resolution says that recognising we have an additional month, tasking officers with going back and further analysing the list provided by brigades to identify are there any further projects that could be achieved or could be nominated with the additional time that we've got to investigate. So take on board that, you know, we've got that extra bit of time, and it may be that there's no projects, it may be that there's one or two that we go, actually, you know, with an extra month's preparation, we could put them forward, and that way we could actually, you know, maybe we get to 8 million, or maybe we do get to the full 10.
Well, at the risk of sort of going into a debate type of issue, Councillor, I think the process which has been kind of usurped to this point is that probably needs to go back through the fire management group. And I'm not sure what the timing around the next meeting of that is. Pardon?
September, Mr. Mayor.
September. So what time in September? And this has now been extended to October, is that right?
Yeah, so it's mid-September. I haven't got the date handy, but it's mid-September.
Yeah, right. All right, any other questions, councillors? All right.
I have one more question. With these projects, through the chair, sorry, with these projects, what is the time frame to have them completed? And once again, do we have enough staff to undertake this? Thank you.
That's correct, thank you. March 2024. And to answer the question, we are going to be stretched, to put it bluntly, we're going to be stretched to deliver these projects that are in addition to what is approved as in regards to the capital works, which the councillors are all aware of sitting to that budget. So will we have scope to go to contractors? Yes, we probably will. But it's about the project management. It's about then the reporting for those who fully comprehend the reporting timelines and milestone reports. It is a lot of work in regards to it. So to answer your question, yes, we will be stretched.
All right, are we done yet, councillors? All right. Well, councillors, I'm happy to move that this list be recommended for funding. Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor, I'm not sure, Councillor Friend, I think, beat you, Councillor Eastwood. All right. So I moved, Councillor Friend seconded. All right. So moving, councillors, I'm comfortable with this list because we've consulted with the rural fire groups, and predominantly their requests are on this list. Yes, there may be some absence of black tar, but this was also discussed at the LDMG yesterday, and from the LDMG's point of view, the list that's been presented to you today is what they recommend that we seek funding for. Now, the Lake Mary bitumen strip was taken off the list, and there are a number of reasons offered for that, Councillor Bello, and that was in terms of one, the lease and the shed, the lease and the construction of the shed hasn't happened as yet, and even though they are confident that it will happen, there's no guarantee. Secondly, some of the area managers of the Rural Fire Service were telling us that some of their sheds currently do not have toilets, and so they felt that was probably a greater priority than sealing strips outside of non-existent sheds at this point in time. And so, Mr Mazzaferri, there are a couple of other reasons as well.
Yeah, one of the reasons offered through you, Mr Mayor, is obviously concerns that why we're doing that when other access to sheds haven't been upgraded. So that was why that was
setting a
decided.
precedent.
That's correct, Mr
Yes.
Mayor. Yep.
Right. So with those two lists, they're councillors, and the fact that it's been discussed with the Rural Fires, it's gone through the local disaster management group, which I might add is the appropriate process. It really, some of these lists should have gone through the fire management group initially, but that didn't happen. I'm not going to go into the reasons why that didn't happen, but I think we've got to a point now where, as a mover of this motion, I'm comfortable that it represents what the fireys want and what also the local disaster management group is prepared to support. Anyone speaking against? Would anyone else like to speak for? All right, we'll close debate then, councillors, and go to the vote on this. All in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr Mazzafarri, for your work. Thank you, Mr Carter, for yours on this as well. Final item is 10.2. All right. I'm thinking, councillors, I'm thinking that we might go into confidential to discuss some matters on the CEO's appointment before we come out and make a decision. Right, so moved, Councillor Mather. All in favour? Carried well, not unanimously, Councillor Hutton? No. Okay, all right. Has Councillor Hutton voted against? Yeah. All right. Right, okay. Yeah. He doesn't have to give you a reason, Councillor. You want to get Mr. Milroy, if he's around somewhere? Thanks. That's really unkind. All right, councillors, we're on 10.2, confirmation of the appointment of the Chief Executive Officer. And as you know, Mr. Dendel was appointed in February this year on a 4-year contract with a 6-month probation period. Now, the 6-month probation period has expired, and that's why we're actually here today to contemplate the confirmation of his appointment. So, councillors, I'm not really sure where there's any need for further questions on this. I'm happy to move the recommendation. Seconded, Councillor Eastwood. I don't feel as though I need to speak to the report, councillors, so I'm just going to go straight to a vote on this one. You'd like to speak to it?
Thank you. I'd like to
Friend.
speak to it. Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm in favour. Throughout these last 6 months, Mr Dendel has engaged both the executive leadership team and by a recent staff survey with the executive leadership team, it is evident that they trust and respect his leadership. All local governments are likened to a large cargo ship in the ocean. There are many components that assist in the running of that ship, just like a council has many diverse internal departments whose staff every day assist and create more livability within the Livingstone Shire. In my opinion, it may be potentially irresponsible to remove our current CEO, as he has brought stability to the council operations, our community, and the staff of Livingstone. And we all deserve stability. The cost of going back to the market, both monetary and reputational, is an unnecessary cost, especially when we cannot guarantee anybody more capable than Mr Dendel. This council has had 4 CEOs, including an acting CEO since the amalgamation. Within this current tenure of council, we have experienced 6 months with a capable acting CEO and 6 months with Mr Dendel, who has again proven himself to be a stable and proactive CEO, a strong captain at the helm of our ship, being the Livingstone Shire Council. Thank you, Mr Dendel.
Thank you, Councillor Friend. Before I wrap up, councillors, anyone else like to speak against or for? Microphone, councillor.
Thank you, Mr
You're
Mayor.
speaking against, councillor?
Yes, Mr Mayor. And I take no joy in doing this because I, probably more than anyone, was keen to see this appointment in the first instance on a number of reasons. And although I have no personal animosity or disrespect to the person in question, I have identified several issues that are crucial to me going forward. Yes, I've been through so many mayors, so many CEOs, and I gauge each one on the circumstances that present at the time. And there have been a number of circumstances over the years where we have all been put to the test. My benchmark is high as far as expectations go. We came into this council knowing we had a culture here, and I've seen 2 sets of rules coming out of this as to how matters have been handled. Perhaps in good faith, perhaps I'm not aware of some of the circumstances that existed. But I do know my expectations hadn't been met. And it does not give me any pleasure to do this. And going forward, I would hope, depending on the outcome, and I suspect I know where that's going, I hope the outcome can prove me very wrong. Because on this occasion I would love to be wrong. But at this point in time, it gives me no pleasure to do this.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. Would anyone else like to speak for the motion?
Yep, I'll speak to the motion in support of extending the Chief Executive Officer's position. And I firstly want to acknowledge Councillor Mather that it's healthy to have robust and diverse opinions, and that puts us all on notice that, you know, we are accountable for our performance, and so I think that's a healthy thing to have within a council. And I like the words that Councillor Friend spoke about stability. I've been very impressed with the level of transparency that Mr. Dendle has brought to this organisation, which at times over the last few years there's been questions about the lack of transparency. The organisational voice panel that I belong with have some very active members who are very skilled and qualified in governance and what have you, and they have been extremely impressed with the level of interaction they've had with Mr. Dendle in that panel, and so it gives me much confidence to have the endorsement of those members as well, and so I'm comfortable and happy to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Eastwood.
It's going to be really quick. I found Mr. Dendle's been a breath of fresh air to the organisation. It's imperative for the stability of the organisation that he remains in office, and I'm very happy to support his position.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. So in the interest of brevity, and so Councillor Hutton can get away, I'll just wrap up on this one, councillors. Mr. Dendle and I have had a conversation, many conversations in relation to his appointment, and he was fully aware that I initially did not support his appointment. But certainly over the last 6 months, he and I have worked together very closely, and I have to say I am impressed. I am also very appreciative of his openness and his transparency, and he has provided me with guidance and advice that I've taken on many occasions. We haven't always agreed, mind you, and certainly Mr. Dendle has been aware of that because we've had robust discussions on a number of things, but certainly I've always appreciated his candour and his openness about things and his willingness to share his expertise. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm more than happy to confirm, to support his continuation as CEO in this role. I think it is important for the stability of this organisation, and it sends a clear message to the staff. Now, look, we're not going to get this ship turned around in his case, 6 months. And, you know, for members of the community looking in who have been critical of the performance of this council in the past and its officers and our performance, it's a big ship to turn around, to use Councillor Friend's analogy. We're not necessarily going to create the environment that our residents want and our community wants within potentially this next term of council. It takes a long time to change things like culture. And so ultimately, we've started the process with Mr. Dendle. He is aware of what we want, and as far as I'm aware, he's working towards that. So I'm more than happy to support his appointment. So councillors, we'll close debate. We've got a mover and myself, seconder and Councillor Eastwood, all in favour. Those against? Thank you, councillors. Carried. Congratulations, Mr. Dendle. All right, so we'll close the meeting. Thank you, councillors. Thank you for your attendance, and thank you to those members of the community who viewed.